Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today is my October wrap-up video, and I'm amazed because October was a really busy month, both at work and just with the Halloween season and all the fun events that we did, and yet I still managed to read 7 books. I'm so happy with myself. That said, I only managed to read 1 book from my October TBR list. I had like this plan of all these books. If you go back to watch that video, I would eventually love to read those books, but I only ended up reading 1 from that list. And the reason for that is because I ended up going to the Merrimack Valley Halloween Book Festival and doing a whole haul. I ended up live streaming that, so if you go back, you can watch that video and see what books I got. So I did read from that list as well. And some of the books I was already reading and had carried over from September, and that is why we are where we are. So now you get to be surprised and find out which one was the one from my TBR video, and now you get to be surprised at what I actually read in October. So to start with, I read The September House by Carissa Orlando, and it was amazing. I love this book. So in this book, we are following Margaret, and she is living in a haunted house. You get that right from the get-go. Her house is very, very haunted. The things that are going on in there are incredibly messed up. She was living with her husband, Hal, and Hal had enough of living in a haunted house. He was like, let's get out of here. And Margaret was like, no, I want to stay. This is my forever home. I love it here. I can, survive anything. I can put up with the haunted house, which revs up in September. That's why it's called The September House. In September, it's the worst month for the hauntings. And for the rest of the year, it's haunted, but it's not as bad. But Hal is like, no, I've had enough. So Hal takes off. And now Margaret's daughter, who's an adult, wants to figure out hey, I haven't heard from Dad in a while. What's going on with you two? And Margaret doesn't want to let her daughter know about all of her marriage drama. And she definitely doesn't want her to know what's going on in this house. But her daughter is not going to take no for an answer, so she comes to the house. And then the rest of the book is just this wild adventure of the two of them in this haunted house, and chaos ensues, and it's awesome. And what I really appreciated about this book, besides the fact that I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the horror, and it was also funny at some bits, is that the ending didn't ruin it. Because lately I've found that sometimes I'm reading horror novels and then I'm enjoying the whole experience, and then I get to the ending and I'm just like, that ruined the whole thing for me. So not the September House. I would definitely reread that every September. So much fun. Highly recommend. The next book that I read in October was Sociopath by Patrick Gagne, and this is a memoir. And I actually tried making a video just talking about this one book, and the video quality came out really poorly and I had to delete the whole thing. It was so sad, but it was amazing. I highly recommend it. And if you can, listen to the audio, because Patrick reads her own memoir and she did a fantastic job narrating her own memoir. She's got a really great voice for reading her story, and I liked when she read some of the funnier parts that she actually kind of laughed along with it. I don't know. It was just a great listening experience as well. But yeah, Sociopath. What can I say? I want to say so much because I love this memoir. You have to read it. Patrick is a psychologist and she is also a sociopath. And she really became a psychologist to kind of figure herself out. I mean, she was diagnosed as a sociopath, but she really wanted to be able to help herself and help other sociopaths. And it details from childhood all the way to adulthood, all of the many interesting and very illegal things that she did throughout her life. And yet, even though she did these things, there's obviously a high level of self-awareness and explaining what the symptoms of sociopathy are. And you just have a lot of empathy for Patrick, even though she herself lacks empathy because of being a sociopath. And even though you're also seeing all of the things that she did that are clearly just not correct behaviors, you also see her interaction with all of these other people in her life. And it was just interesting to see how sometimes she was very scapegoated in her life, or people were sort of using her. It was just very interesting to see how these dynamics played out. Some people really enjoyed the fact that she was a sociopath because she didn't hide her diagnosis. She wanted to be open about it when she got diagnosed. And they thought that was like really cool. They like gravitated towards her about that. But then when she was just being herself and it didn't suit them, or didn't serve them in some way, they were like really harsh about that. And then suddenly it wasn't okay for her to be herself, but other people were also doing messed up things and yet feeling like they were in some ways superior sometimes because she was a sociopath. It was just, I don't know, just a fascinating read. Definitely read it. It's amazing. I just loved it. Okay. So this is the one book that I actually did read from my TBR that I intended to read, and it was The Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer by Maxi Dara. This book was really cool. I actually thought it was a cozy murder mystery, and it's a series, so I don't know why. Based on the cover and the fact that I knew it was a series, I just assumed cozy murder mystery series. It is not a cozy. So a cozy is when there is like no swearing, no violence, no mature content. And there's really no violence or mature content, but there's a lot of swearing in this book. So if you are uncomfortable with profanity, this probably isn't the book for you. I have no problem with profanity whatsoever. So I really enjoyed this book. It was really original. It was really fun. In the book, we're following Kathy Valence, and she works for this company called Scythe. And I can't remember off the top of my head what the acronym stands for, but essentially her role is to help reap souls and help them like cross over. It has to do with people's essences. So they're not really necessarily called souls, they're called essences. And Kathy is kind of going through a lot of changes in her life. She is pregnant, but she's also mid-divorce. One day she happens to go to do her job and reap this soul or essence of a teenager, and he is not there. She can't find him. And ultimately she does end up finding him, but she can't, it's kind of, this part's a little bit complicated, but she can't help him cross over. She can't collect the essence because he's like sort of refusing to go in a way because he believes that he was murdered, Connor. So she has to help him, and there's like this really weird mystery about this because she's trying to figure out, based on the clues and what's going on, if it's actually tied to some conspiracy at her work, or she's not really sure what is going on. It was just a wild adventure, a wild ride. I really actually like the romantic subplot in this one, and I normally don't really care about romantic subplots, but this one was like original. This is not your usual romantic subplot. And I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to spoil it. It's really good. Like, I actually found their relationship to be just so much more original and fun. I don't know, it was just really cool. In terms of the writing of Connor, sometimes it was a little bit hard to see him as a teenager in some ways, or I'm not sure. But I thought the dynamic between the main character, Kathy, and Connor was pretty good too. But overall, I mean, I enjoyed the whole story, but I can't figure out like how now this is going to turn into a series, because it actually ends to me in a very complete way. So I'm all right, based on where we've left off and how this has ended, how is this going to continue to be more mysteries unless it's more of these souls not being able to cross over? I don't know. I can't wrap my brain around how it's going to continue on as a series, but I definitely would read the sequel to this. I thought it was really fun and original, so I'm going to check that out when it comes out. The next book that I read in October was The Night Guest by Hildur Knutsdottir. I'm not sure. I actually watched videos trying to figure out how to pronounce her name because it's an Icelandic author. And I probably just embarrassed myself, but I figured I'd give it a shot. So I don't think I really said that right at all, but I tried. This was one of the books that I'm not so sure about. And I think when I looked it up after I had read it, it does seem like it gets mixed reviews. People like really enjoyed the book, or people really did not enjoy the book. And funny enough, like the people who didn't enjoy the book didn't enjoy it for different reasons than the reasons why I didn't fully enjoy the book. So it's a very short novella. It is not long at all. I read it in one day. And the premise is amazing because it's, you know, about a woman who she's going to the doctors because she's in chronic pain. And I enjoy reading books about that because I went through a period in my life where I was experiencing intense chronic pain, and the doctors could not find any real reason for my pain as well, but it was real. So I enjoy reading books about that premise because I think a lot of us face that. All's Well by Mona Awad is an excellent example of that. Maybe I'll talk about that book sometime. But anyway, so in this book, our main character is going to these doctors and talking about her pain, and they don't know what's going on with her. And they end up recommending her to a therapist instead, just, in case this is just psychosomatic. But then things really escalate because she gets and this isn't really a spoiler, but she gets like a pedometer and she discovers that she's walking like 40,000 steps a night with no recollection. And that is why she's feeling like so tired and exhausted and sore every day. And this was really cool. Like, I liked the premise and I actually liked the horror in it, but not only was the ending troubling for me in a way, how do I put this? I don't necessarily have a problem with an ambiguous ending. My issue is when there are way too many unanswered questions. So it's fine to like have a book end and you don't really have a solid answer, but you feel like a lot of things are complete to some extent. This book left me with so many unanswered questions that I actually kind of felt a little frustrated and went on a rant to one of my friends. And I was like, but then this happened, but I don't know why this happened. And like, was this even real? And, what did that mean when that happened? So there were just so many things like that. And it had shifted away from her commentary on the healthcare system to being about toxic relationships instead. And I just felt confused. So that was a little bit disappointing. But a lot of people did enjoy it. And I got all the way through. I didn't DNF it because I really was invested in the character. And I really liked the main character and I wanted to know what was happening. But it just ended and I really didn't really know what happened. So, oh well. And then the next book I read was, all right. So I got through the Rack anthology. And this is stories inspired by vintage horror paperbacks, edited by Tom Deedy, introduction by Will Erickson. This collection of short stories was phenomenal. I recommend it to everyone. If you love horror and you love short stories, go for this. And I didn't think I was a short story person, but I think it's because when I've read short story collections in the past, it's just one author's full collection. And if you're not really into that author, then you're probably not going to like enjoy the rest, like the whole collection. But in this one, because it's an anthology and there's all different people in here, like some you might resonate with more. I actually thought the whole collection was fantastic. There was one that I was a little bit meh about, but the rest of them I really enjoyed. And there were some standouts. I mean, honestly, all of them are great. But my favorite one, and this one is called Fuzzy Slippers by Jeff Strand, because it's really, really funny. I think this one might be the shortest one, but it's funny. It's crazy. I found myself like reading parts of it out loud to my partner. And I was just like, this is crazy. You have to listen to this. I can't believe that this is in a story. And the main character, phenomenal. I just love this story. So you should just get it and read Fuzzy Slippers. But I also really enjoyed Irish Eyes by Bridget Nelson. And I don't want to say too much about this one either, because you just have to experience it. But what really stood out to me about this one is the dramatic irony in this story. So you know what is going on, but the main character does not know what's going on. And that just really increases all the suspense and dread. And you're just watching this horror play out. So good. And then I also enjoyed Blood of My Blood by Krista Carmen. And this is a vampire short story. But even if you're like, oh, vampires are so overdone at this point, no. This vampire story is great. And it's about a wedding. And it's hilarious, but it's also extremely feminist. It was fantastic. So that was another one I loved. I also really liked The Keeper of Taswimet by Eric Nunnally. And I'm hoping I was saying that word right. But this is like a creature feature type of short story. And I'm not normally like a creature feature kind of person, but this one was well done and it takes place in Cape Cod, which I'm very familiar with. And I like that it was a little bit sci-fi too. It was really good. And I like the main character a lot. So you can tell like if there's a really good main character in it, especially if it's like a female protagonist who is kind of badass, I'm going to love that story. And then also another standout was White Pages by Clay McLeod Chapman. This story is just like so great. So they're all good, but this one here starts off so funny and there's all this nostalgia because it's literally about the White Pages and prank calling people with the White Pages. And I was of that age where like I definitely can remember a time when I was with a friend and we like made a prank call with the White Pages, and I can still vividly remember the experience of that. But then after we have all this like fun, silly stuff going on, it gets dark really quickly. And it was just the pacing was great, so well done. Love this collection, and I hope they come out with another one because I'll definitely read that. So I got another anthology. This was October Screams, and I got this at the Merrimack Valley Halloween Book Fair, and it was awesome. I just love this one. So this is all Halloween themed stories. So there's like a lot of trick-or-treating going on here and costumes and all that good stuff. This one also had some standouts. Oh, and I really like the details in this one too. I don't know if this is published by the same person who published the Fear of Clowns one, but I just love how they always start each story with like a really cool image. And this was just a great lead up to Halloween. So the standouts for me were Sweet Meat by Clay McLeod Chapman, again, who's in the Rack anthology. And this is the first story. And they were so smart in choosing this one to be the first one in the book, because this one was deeply disturbing, but it also hits a lot of nostalgia around trick-or-treating, but told from the perspective of a parent whose kid is going out trick-or-treating. And I really don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything. You just have to read it. I still think about this story and I'm like, wow. So really good. And then other standouts for me were Free Candy and Telescope Views by Red Lego. And I am unfamiliar with this. I'm unfamiliar with most of these authors in these collections. I met a few of them at that event, had them sign my book. But this one here was really good. We have this like young, and you get to know like what is happening in her life. And the ending just caught me so off guard. I really enjoyed this one a lot. And then another standout was the Hooper Street Halloween Decoration Committee by Gemma Amor. Oh my gosh. This one is funny also, and it has to do with like a town that really loves Halloween, and Halloween decorations are really big there. But you have these two new people who have moved to the town, and I don't want to say too much, but you have to read it. That one was so excellent as well. And then another standout was once again Bridget Nelson. I definitely want to read more by Bridget Nelson. Her stories are great. This was November Eve, and it wasn't dramatic irony in this one at all. It was very different from her other one, Irish Eyes, but also deals with, I don't know if she always brings in some Irish culture, but I really like that. And this one like just caught me off guard. Like I would make a prediction thinking that I knew what was going to happen, and I might be like slightly right on that, but she would like really ratchet it up even more than what I thought was going to happen. And then there were other things that happened that I was like, oh, I did not really see that this was going to be the direction it was. And I actually went back to reread it because I'm someone like, I've read for a really long period of time English teacher. So I'm all about like looking for the clues and like making all these predictions. And the way she wrote it was just so brilliant because I went back and I was like, okay, so that's what that meant. And I didn't interpret it that way at the time. And it just makes it like a really enjoyable experience. So a lot of great stories in this one. I'll reread this like every time October rolls around. Such a good collection. Last but not least, I read Coup de Grace. I think that's how you say it. It's French, meaning like the final blow, by Sophia Ajram. And this is another one that I thought I would really like because it's a short novella, it's horror, and it's about our main character, Vicken. And Vicken is very depressed. It's not a spoiler. It starts off this way. Vicken is planning on unaliving themselves. So they are that depressed. They are done with this. They feel like they have really tried, but they cannot get past their depression. So he basically goes on this train ride to Montreal with the plan that when he gets off the train, he has a plan for going through with that. He ends up meeting someone on the train. They have this very interesting, intimate encounter. So I actually really enjoyed the beginning because I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. And then he ends up, when he gets off the train, in some kind of purgatory situation. It is a subway system that he just cannot escape from. And this is where things just kind of, I don't know, went in strange ways for me. I can see where other people would actually really like this book. And this is another one that had really mixed reviews. So some people like straight up really love this book. It just didn't work for me personally. The writing style kind of shifted. I understood what it was trying to do. I understood the metaphors and I understood a lot of the commentary. And I actually like really liked the main horror element that showed up like in the middle of the book-ish, and you're never really sure like what that was. I have some ideas of what that was. And then even the ending, like I can kind of appreciate, and some people didn't like it, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but I even thought like some of those parts, plural, on purpose, were interesting. But the reading experience itself for me with the writing style just wasn't that enjoyable for me personally. And I don't think it's a badly written book. I actually really do feel like there are a lot of people that would love this book. It just didn't work for me for different reasons. And it just, I think that's okay. So I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, I'm bashing this book, because I just didn't vibe with that. And that's okay. It wasn't like the other one, The Night Guest, where I was actually frustrated with that book because I had no idea. Not that I didn't have an understanding of what was going on, but there were just so many unanswered questions and ambiguity. This did not have an ambiguous ending, and I didn't mind the ending. I was like, okay, well, there you go. But it was just the writing style and the language. And I found in a lot of parts that I would start kind of like skimming and skipping through to try to like get to the next thing. But overall, like, I'm really happy with what I read. It was an enjoyable month. I'm already reading something new now that I can't wait to share in my November wrap up. Yeah, so I guess my main plan at this point, I don't think I'm going to do traditional TBR videos like I've been doing for November or December. I think I'm going to do something different instead, because most of the books I've already talked about that I want to read, I've already talked about in previous TBR videos. So I have a stack of my own books that I want to get through. So that's sort of my plan here. And yeah, that's what I read. So let me know if any of those books sound amazing to you, or if you've read any of them, what you thought of them, because I'd love to talk about it. And I will see you next time.